welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, but not wizards. Enjoy the show!
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for May. We're right into May. It's the end of May, which means it's potentially coming into the beginning of June, which means there's going to be one big thing happening that's on everybody's mind and everybody's calendars, that if they're heading down to Birmingham, there's going to be the UK Games Expo kind of coming on. Now, I'm not going to be going to the UK Games Expo. However, I was very, very kindly asked by my guest if I'd be interested in going down and making an absolute fool of myself in front of a whole group of people. I'm leaving that to Polyhedron Collider, who are going to be going down and making an absolute fool of themselves. Like they're kind of like Top Gear, except imagine it's kind of like not being in cars and just like kind of still being kind of idiots. I still like them very, very much. But when you've got somebody like Polyhedron Collider to look after, you don't just need a normal person. You need somebody who's like maybe very, very masterful at herding cats. You need somebody that's at the top of their game. You could say you need somebody who's potentially a games master. So there's only one person to ask along. I've got Millie the GM, Millie Lavelle, coming here to talk to us about tabletop gaming and GMing and writing RPGs. And so, yes, we're going on to the dark side. There potentially could be wizards. I'm not going to say it, but we never know. So, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very
wow. I mentioned
intro?
Wizards and you're just like, going, well,
what's that? No, yeah, it's bonkers when you kind of talk about like the expo and things. Like you sit down and you go, oh goodness, I do herd a lot of cats over 12 months, and then a lot more over 3 days. Oh, I must be all right here because this is the 8th time I'm doing it. So yeah.
How do you get involved in something like that? I mean, I take it you must know. You must know Richard then, and at Medusa then to kind of get involved in this kind of stuff.
It was really weird. Like the first time I went to UK Games Expo, it was a volunteers. Like I volunteered, and it was a slightly tangential like sort of way into it. I was also part of a community radio station, and I was a volunteer for them. I had a radio show, and we were doing a lot of stuff about Volunteer Month, because it's like
right, okay,
like there's like National Volunteer Month and National, there's a day for everything these days. And obviously, being a community radio station, that basically up and down the country, all your community radio stations are 99% volunteer run, led, organised, produced by people who just turn up and volunteer their time. And we were doing like all different kinds of volunteering things. My radio show was specifically, it was actually called Geek on Radio because I'm a massive nerd. And every week we would do some sort of nerdy thing. And we would talk to a nerdy person from the local university or the comic book shop or it was great. I talked to loads of nerdy people, and then we had this bright idea, like if I could get a volunteer spot at UK Games Expo, I could go and do an away, like an outside broadcast. It was recorded, it wasn't live,
yeah.
But that's how I got involved. So I had like this weird like volunteer press pass for the weekend. And it was brilliant. Like I would never have been able to have gone to the UK Games Expo otherwise. Like, people have these massive hall posts. Like I would have just struggled for the hotel. Like,
I always wonder about that, because it always seems to be for the hall posts. It always seems to be a certain type of people, and being somebody who's involved in kind of like the BG media scene, you're kind of looking, yeah, that's fine, but a lot of that stuff, I think that was kind of prearranged and you were just kind of like picking it up, because it is a good time to kind of arrange with publishers to kind of pick up kind of review and preview copies and stuff like that. So sometimes when you see a big, huge haul, it's kind of actually, well, I think you'll find I actually just bought this small book, and everything else is literally stuff that will allow me to kind of do the previewing and reviewing side of things.
But yeah, I volunteered. Like I signed up to volunteer, because if you do a certain number of hours over the weekend, you get a room. You don't get to pick who you share with, but you get a room. They'll put you up for a thing. And then also you'll get like some vouchers that'll, the Chow Street, like outside the Hilton.
Yeah.
You get a couple of vouchers to cover like an evening meal. Not like an evening meal, but like a burger or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's part of volunteering. And that was great. When those kind of costs were like, okay, so because the radio station is not paying for anything, right? We're volunteers. We can barely afford hobnobs. Like hobnobs are only brought out when we have like a civic guest turning up. You might be giving us more funding. Here's the chocolate biscuits. That was the joke.
Do you actually have a locked away celebratory kind of pack of chocolate hobnobs?
Well,
in case somebody very, very special kind of comes in.
Long story. There was a while ago, a few years ago, the funding changed. And we did a lot of our stuff through funding and training people on how to make their own radio show. We lost a lot of that funding. So the radio station that I was at doesn't exist anymore. I am sort of half involved with some other like community radios, but they're a little bit far away from me. So unfortunately, the radio station that my radio show was on doesn't exist. But yeah, we used to have like, this is our special pack of biscuits and that kind of stuff. But that was like the motivation and the sort of like go and the volunteering side of things, because I would never have thought about it otherwise. And that was the year before the NEC was added on. So everything was just in the Hilton.
Wow.
And the Hilton was like jam packed. And my very first thing when I arrived, when I arrived there way back when, they used to have trays. Like none of this show us a QR code or give us a email. It was literally like a bunch of folks would go through a box and find an envelope with your name on it. And in that envelope would be your weekend tickets. If you booked any RPGs, you'd have your little ticket for that. If you booked an event, you'd have a little ticket, and they'd give you that. And you stood there and you checked everything you'd pre-ordered was in the envelope. And then you'd go and join the expo. So I got my volunteer stuff and had to go and guard, library in the Hilton. There's a room called library. I think it's open gaming, or it might be where the ticket desk is this year. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But I had to go and stand there for about 3 hours while traders set up, but keep out like visitors and be like, no, have you got an exhibitors pass? You can't come in yet.
Did they give you a broom or a sword, or did you a plunger?
No. There was just like 3 or 4 of us. We were there for a bit. And then one of the chaps who was there, one of like the team leaders, because also the thing they used to have to do that we don't have to do anymore. Well, it sort of still happens, but it was they used to have to go around the Hilton overnight and tape out the aisles and tape out the spaces where each trader would be, like, and with like masking tape and be like, your 3 meter by 2 meter stand is inside this line. Everything has to fit in here. But they had to go out overnight. What would that have been? Thursday night into Friday morning or something, and tape that out. And when I got there, one of these chaps, I think it was Simon, a chap called Simon, had been doing that all night and needed to go to sleep. So he was like, here's a radio. You're in charge of this now. I'm going to bed. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I've been here 3 hours. Thanks.
So you get charged on kind of like everything. Have you always been that kind of a little bit of a kind of like an extrovert? Because
No.
obviously, we're talking from the GM side of things. Do you like to organise and stuff like that? Because if you're talking about kind of getting involved in kind of tabletop role playing, and then you're talking about herding people like Steve Tudor to get him to go on
Do you know,
stage.
like
No,
we'll cut
Steve's
show,
lovely.
right? We'll cut, and
Right.
afterwards I'll tell you about the polyhedron collider rider. Okay? It's just unbearable. Like the bit. Oh, I shouldn't. We're still recording. Okay, no. So no, I wouldn't say I'm an extrovert. I would say basically I am like some sort of goblin who likes to hide in their cave. And then now and again I will ferret out and do big loud things, and then I'll run away again for a while. Like I was joking with my husband, who has occasionally walked past a couple of times. You might hear him swishing through. Like until you mentioned it this afternoon, I haven't gone out for about 3 days and talked to anybody. And I'm like, I'm just gonna hide here, like just hide. But
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I've kind of become. I work from home, so I think I've kind of become the same, that I end up kind of forcing myself to kind of go out. Like once I'm finished here, I'm gonna go out and I'll go to the shops. I'll go to Tesco's. I'll surround myself by people for a little bit. But the kind of sometimes I just like I don't want to do that. I just want to kind of I'm quite happy kind of being in here, or I'll take myself along to the local games club. But I kind of like that's why I kind of like the podcast side of things, because I like it's like kind of it's a kind of yes, I'm putting my voice out there, but it's a very very kind of controlled kind of situation, if you know what I mean.
I quite often
I mean,
think,
you'll know this because of like streaming and stuff like that you do, that you know, it's like yes, there's very little kind of audience interaction. Nobody can kind of jump on and say, boo, this is boring, or I don't like this, or yeah, this is amazing, kind of like keep it going kind of thing. There's kind of a little bit of a lack of kind of like that direct kind of maybe kind of interaction and interference, which I can kind of get behind.
Yeah, I think Twitch streaming is a bit different because obviously you have like live viewers and people commenting, and sometimes so the first actual play sort of thing was just me and some folks. Like we had a couple of mics I had from the radio station, only 2 of them. Like and people always think like, oh, these must be amazing mics, and it's like, oh, please, like we did stuff with the local BBC radio station, and not even they were very good mics. We're talking like 15 quid mic that's got a fancy fluff shield on, and this old desk kind of thing. And we got together and played some D&D, and that was, I think, more in my end of the thing, it's working out how to do stuff, like the logistics of this. How do you do this thing? How do you tweak that to make it? What are they doing? Like I quite often watch like Dimension 20 and Critical Role and those folks, and I'm like, well, what are they? How are they doing that? Oh, they're projecting that from the other side. Oh, okay. How are they? What mic setup have they got? You know, and I think it's more for me like the process of making the thing rather than the other end of it. I feel I've gone rambling left, but I think that's okay.
It's absolutely fine, as I say.
But yeah,
I could.
It's so I don't think, like, I guess it all sort of circles back in itself. It's not necessarily a case of I'm the sort of person who likes to organize people, or I want to put it's the process. Like what is the logistically the best way of working this out? How can we do that? Like anybody who's watched some of the live streams, sometimes you can tell when I've gone down a rabbit hole because things have suddenly become incredibly overproduced, but I was trying to work out how somebody else did something. So now that's how I know how to do it. I'll use it for 2 or 3 sessions, and then that's it, dead. We'll never go back to that style of map again, or that sort of, you know, graphic in a thing, or that audio cue or whatever. Because I've worked that out now. That's done. and I'm going to carry on with whatever it is next. But yeah.
How did you first get into role playing games? I mean, I realise we've jumped like right into the present. Potentially, we've jumped into a little bit into the future, talking about kind of like UK Games Expo and giving the Hedron boys far too much publicity. But
I mean,
taking
other,
it back
other seminars
background
are
to
available.
yourself.
Oh, so
Other seminars definitely are available.
yeah.
But going back to yourself, yeah, how did you first kind of pick up kind of like a kind of a multi-book and start flicking through it, grab some dice and a pen and a sheet and go, right, let's see what's out there, kind of thing?
It was a very long time ago, and a group of us were air cadets.
Okay.
So we're talking like about 27 years ago. A group of us air cadets. One of the guys, his dad played AD&D, and then we were like, all right, well, do you want to come and play AD&D with us? Like, yeah. Mickey, Mike said that, and so there was about 4 of us, and I was just like, yeah, sure, let's, you're semi-cool people, I'll come and join in with you. And we did that thing, and it depends on if people know like Dungeons and Dragons, like old Dungeons and Dragons rather than 5th edition. We did that thing where we did to roll stats in order, 4d6, ignore the lowest one. And it started on, I rolled 3 6s and a 4 or something, so I had 18 strength. And when you have 18 strength in that system, you then have to roll a percentile dice to see how much of that 18, like you can't have the highest strength. Like,
yeah.
So I then rolled all zeros on the percentile dice, which I didn't understand. I had just done 2 of the best rolls ever in this system. and therefore I was like, all right, yeah, that's great. So I had this 1800 strength fighter, and that was my first ever character. And there we go. I have no idea what to call them, so they just got called Red. Like, all right, I like Red. There's Red. And the little, way back in those modules, everybody in a village was detailed. Everybody was detailed, and also they all had like all this stuff, like the stuff you could nick, and all that kind of things. I just went through like the list of people in the village. The butcher was called Azel, Mr. Azel the butcher, or whatever he was. So I decided that Red Azel was the butcher's daughter, and that would be their name. And they would try and play on it like they were scary because they were the butcher's daughter, as in like my dad butchered everyone. And it wasn't. It was because, like, you know, he cut up the cow. He was literally the butcher, and that was our joke. Because I think I rolled absolutely abominable for charisma or fellowship or whatever it was back then. But yeah, that was my. And when we played like a bunch of stuff, after a little while, we played some Vampire the Masquerade. And I can't remember what my first vampire character was, but I do remember they were the only one who had the ability to keep up with the other bad guy. We had a cool chase scene.
All right.
Because like you could have special powers. I completely forget, but I do remember that chase scene. And then like real life got in the way a bit. I moved around the country a little bit. I came up to where I sort of near where I live now, up in Lancashire, and the college I was at, there were some folks who were playing WFRP, which is the Warhammer system, which is brilliant. It's very British in its humour. Like, you lucky. One of the things is like a sewer jack. One of the careers is a sewer jack. So Dungeons and Dragons has things like fighter and rogue and cleric, and then WFRP has like sewer jack, sweet streeper, servant,
Exactly. Exactly.
that kind of stuff.
Dustman.
Yeah, just tone it down a bit,
delivery
Brits.
driver.
Just tone it down. Yeah, you're not going to be that brilliant. But the sewer guy has a yappy dog. I remember. So I played that for a bit, and then it all sort of died off. And then I remember when I was courting my husband, he talked about. He played WFRP. He's waving there in the background for viewers. He's very proud. He played WFRP, and they were playing. I can't remember the name of the scenario. I can't remember. But the GM was also running a character, so I ended up taking over her character for a bit, and that kind of stuff. And we sort of got in that, and played a bit around with that. And then I opened for a short while. It wasn't very successful. Let's not dwell on this next bit I'm about to explain. I opened a board game cafe. Okay. But in that we ran Adventure League, which is the 5th edition organised play. So we ran Adventure League. Obviously, when loads of folks get involved in that, there are quite often folks like, oh, I really like this. What else can we do? And so we ran things like Tales from the Loop and Delta Green, which is like modern day Cthulhu stuff. And then, it's just like since Dice and Donuts, like, I joke, let's not talk about it, but it for its couple of years it ran, it was fun. But we did a lot of that. And then the podcast kind of stuff came out of, we wanted to do podcasting at the time was like, promote your business with a podcast. And we're like, how are we going to promote? How are we going to promote a board game cafe with that? Well, maybe we could just do like a podcast where we play Dungeons and Dragons. And maybe we can just be like sponsored by the cafe. And the podcast turns out it lasted longer than the cafe, as things goes.
Tragic. That must have been a kind of like, we're no longer sponsored.
Which
by Dyson Donuts.
We didn't actually ever get round to putting like the sponsorship on it because we're too British. Like it's bad to promote yourself, eh? It's bad stuff.
I always have kind of great respect for people that just go out there all the time, kind of everywhere, and are just constantly they're always switched on, and they're always like, they never miss a beat. They kind of like, I see some people that like, and I have utmost respect for them, that they're in every single kind of Facebook group. They're always kind of like first on the kind of like the latest platform. They're always doing those like kind of little bit extra things that you could just kind of like going, this is a hobby, and this is now starting to feel a little bit like ongoing kind of hard work, if you know what I mean.
I think,
So I totally understand the people that kind of like, they would kind of like, they have a vision, and I don't think it's because they work harder or anything like that. I think there's a lot of people that say, right, okay, when I set up a show, or I set up a podcast, or I set up like a board game blog, or if I set up a stream, they go, right, I've got to set up my Instagram account, I've got to do like, I've got to do my Facebook group, I've got to do my blog, I've got to do my other kind of Instagram social media. And then everybody says, so what you do is you post regularly on it. And there's always these people that's what they do. They're always posting kind of regularly on the time. It's not like they're kind of like they maybe just, I don't know, I think it's maybe organization, Millie. I think that's what it is. I think they just kind of like know, they kind of like schedule stuff, and they kind of know kind of what they're doing, but they're just kind of consistently, and they're kind of always kind of out there. In terms of kind of like games, then, are you the type of person that's got more of a collection of kind of RPG books on your shelf as opposed to a huge range of kind of board games, or have you got kind of like a mix and a match between the two of them?
No, we've got loads. Like I said, we have like I ran a board game cafe, and we had like a couple of hundred games there. And like I do like to play board games. Like I know the rules and how to teach and all that kind of stuff for lots of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, it doesn't quite click with me. Like, I mean, there's a shelf on the side here. We've got like, Battlestar Galactica and Dice Hospital and War of Whispers and Networks and Alchemist. I really like the Alchemist. You know, the one, but I get too engrossed in the logic puzzle. Trying to work out, do you know what I mean? Like but you also have to present your things, and you have to do this other thing as well and collect the ingredients. No, just give me all the cards, let me work out the things. Bandu, we've got Discworld, we've got a copy of that.
Wow. That doesn't sound like a board game collection. That sounds more like a retirement fund.
I know, right?
The price of these things kind of go. Because I always see them. I see, I've got a mint copy of Discworld, and folk are like saying, well, it's £110 or £120. I'm like going, I remember seeing that on shelves and there being like 4 or 5 copies at one time. And it was like at some point they weren't selling them for that much. And now they're kind of like that. And you mentioned Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And people go absolutely crazy for Battlestar Galactica as well. Like it's like some kind of hen's teeth type thing. I think because they printed it for a while and then it kind of went out of print, and because this TV series ended, they just didn't bother kind of ever printing it again.
And then FFG, I think, lost the license for that IP.
Yes. Yes.
But we've got this copy. And my friend is never going to listen because he's not into listening. He's just, some folks aren't podcast people.
Just make them.
I just force it. No, because I'm just about to spill some secrets. So we've got this copy of Battlestar Galactica, but my friend also has a copy of Battlestar Galactica. And originally we had like a bunch of expansions for it, but he also has a bunch of expansions for it. So we sold our expansions. Right. Like we were like, sell it. Because he's always going to fetch over all his expansions to play it because he's got all the stuff and he's got it all sleeved. And Gaz, bless him, loves the game to bits. Like we'll joke, anybody who's played it, we've got the Pegasus bit, and he always wants to be Admiral Kane and airlock everybody until we find the Cylon. It's like we can't do that because we'll run out of morale or something. People as well. That kind of stuff. So we were cheeky. We sold all our Battlestar expansions, knowing full well we'll still have the opportunity to play the full game with our buddy. But yeah, there's that. Do
you regret doing that? Is there a party that's kind of like, it would be nice to kind of hold on to them? But then it's like,
no,
only these things are only worth value if you sell them. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I could have like a Van Gogh sitting on my,
I'd love a Van Gogh.
Hanging on my wall, and but people would say, oh, that's worth 74 million £74 but it's actually only worth £74 million when I sell it. And it's the same with Battlestar Galactica. You could have a copy of Battlestar Galactica mint and sealed, and it could sit on your shelf for years, and people will say, oh, that's mint, it's worth £200 or whatever, but it's only actually worth £200 until I'm willing to kind of get it out of the house.
It wasn't like my husband had a copy of Blood Bowl Team Manager, the little card game version of Blood Bowl.
Oh yeah.
And he sold that and then regretted it, and then we've since bought in a new copy. Not a new copy, but we've since replaced. Because he was like, I love that game. And we were like, well, why did you sell it? It's like, I don't know, let's buy a new one. It's okay, let's buy a new one. So that, I think, has been the only one we've been like, I shouldn't have sold that.
My one was Godfather, Corleone's Empire.
Oh, yeah?
Empire. The one with the metal suitcases and the little plastic kind of miniatures. It was a Simon game. I mentioned it like a couple of shows back, but it kind of like, I had it.
Is that the one where you could literally put the mini in the lake or in the river or something?
Yeah. That was the whole point of the game was like you would eliminate, like if you eliminated other players, what would happen is you'd drop them in. I think is it the Hudson? You'd actually
Yeah,
drop them in the
drop 'em in
Hudson
the river.
River until the next round. That was like it was a little bit of player elimination. You kind of killed characters, and then they stayed in the river until the kind of like the next round, and then they kind of got resurrected. But that was one that was kind of like it was going through, like it was out, and I think Simon released it, and then nobody bought it, so you could get it for like literally next to nothing. And all of a sudden, over a period of time, everything kind of disappeared, and then you couldn't get it again. And now it's really, really difficult to get it. It's easy to get in the US, but it's really, really difficult to kind of get in the UK. I've seen people kind of like, I know somebody was like selling it in one of the Facebook groups, and somebody cheekily said, "Oh, that usually goes for about £50." And I thought, a number of comments are just like, he's lying. He's not telling the truth. There's no way. So I've just seen that. But you were saying about like the game that you kind of regret,
So
maybe kind of getting rid of.
it's not necessarily getting rid of, but the one game I wish I could go back and play again is the Pandemic Legacy. Like, I haven't got rid of it, but I've done it. You break the things, and not necessarily that I want to go back and have not broken the components. When it says rip the thing up, I rip, stuck the stickers down, rip the things. But that's the one thing I'm like, if I could go back again and do it again, that would be great. Because I'd never played like a legacy board game before, and obviously I love in RPGs and stuff the consequences of the continuity of things. Like, we could play around a Discworld. This time I'm Lord Rust. I lose. And we reset the board. This time I'm not Lord Rust, but I can, I'm going to play. And it doesn't matter. But in between every single game of Pandemic Legacy, that all mattered. And I'd love to go back and play them fresh, if you will. It's like, because we've...
Is it about the experience then? Is that why you kind of like that? Because the way I was kind of like viewing games, I feel like we played Armada from Mantic Games, and I played that with my son, and it wasn't the rules that we remembered. It was the fact that there was kind of like the experience of the fact that I kind of thought I had him kind of like in my sights, and then I rolled absolutely abysmally, and then it ended up in some kind of like Benny Hill kind of yakety sax kind of me kind of like running, me kind of like basically trying to escape from his two biggest ships, because he turned around basically and he tried to be. Now, that wasn't based on the rules. That wasn't based on how far the ships were or how fast the ships were. That was the kind of the experience. So is that why you're kind of very much kind of into the role playing stuff, and is that why something like Pandemic Legacy appeals to you? It's not necessarily because of the rules in the game. It's more kind of like the experiences and the memories that you can kind of
I think definitely in terms of like the board game sort of things, like the Resistance and Coup, Two Booms in a Room. We've played some great like New Year's Eve games with loads of folks and that. Secret Fascist, use the safer version of the name. That's a great game. Like, so those are definitely ones. Like, I remember a couple of years ago at Expo, it was Thursday night, sat in the bar of the Hilton. We're playing Coup, and I remember leaning over to the chap sat next to me. Never met this chap before. We're just playing this game in the bar of the Hilton. I think it's like the second time he's ever played Coup. And I lean over to somebody after somebody's declared they're the Countessa or something, and I'm like, challenge them. And they look at me and like go, all right, yeah. I'm like, you've just killed yourself. I've just won. And how outraged this poor chap was that, like, he didn't think at that point, like, why aren't you challenging them? Why
it's not real, but yeah, it's the kind of the whole kind of we could never actually do this in real life, but I'm kind of doing it. I'm kind of doing it, kind of just now, kind of thing. When you're GMing, when you're kind of like running sessions, how much would you say that kind of like most of these experiences kind of occur organically? I mean, is it possible to actually plan the greatest escape's just going to happen, or somebody misses out by just a whisker, or somebody saves the day, just by happening to pick up that one thing? I mean, how easy is it to kind of engineer those situations, or is it more the case that sometimes you just got to let something kind of happen kind of organically, and then let the experience kind of form itself?
I think there's so in most sort of adventures, there is like a setup, and then it depends on the system. Like some systems handle things differently, but mostly it's like, all right, this is the premise, this is the thing, the hero's journey, this is the inciting point, and we're just going to literally ride a roller coaster now and see which way it goes. Because as a GM, I will sort of know what the world, like, I guess Tales from the Loop and stuff is probably the easier. Like, I know what the world is going to do if you sit still and do nothing, and I know what the people in the world, their sort of personal motivations are, and so how you interact as characters with those things dictates the way it rolls next. And sometimes players can go, oh, well, I'm just going to give them exactly what they want in the hope that I'll just get exactly what I need. And then sometimes they go, I'm going to try and swindle everybody left, right, and you have to sort of roll with that and pick and choose and see. So on the one hand, there is a bunch of prep. And like for me, and there's a lot of different ways that other folks do it, but for me, it's the front loading of like, who are these people that we're going to meet along the journey? What is the world around this journey going to do?
Yeah.
And then let these agents of chaos, because typically players are agents of chaos, especially in some of the games I'm running at the minute. And let's see what they pick. Let's see how they roll. And you can then, once if you've played a little while with them, you can sort of narrow things down. Like, we have just finished a long campaign. We were playing D&D with some folks for years. And so there's a lot of, at the minute, like we went from level 1 to level 20 with the whole run. Started off just doing like little adventures and finding little bits and pieces for some folks in a local town. Ended the level 20 killing a god in hell, whilst Fury Road Rock plays in the background, that kind of hero's journey. But when you sit down and do that, like, there was a time where the bard in the group was forever polymorphing into a dinosaur, and that was their like sort of uber fight tactic. And it's like, okay, we know that's going to do that now, so we'll change it so the bad guy knows how to use things that are going to counter that. And so we had like and then they were all like, oh no, world has changed, what do we do now? And they had to go away and think of a new tactic, because obviously you don't want a T-Rex that's no longer on your side attacking you when it's your mate, because you can't kill it because it's your mate. And that sort of spanners in those works, like the big and then NPCs who are sort of your friends right up until they get their point, the thing they want, and then they skedaddle. It's like, you've ditched us in the wrong place. It's like, well, you would have done the same to me, because you did it to my dad, and that kind of thing. So it's to me, it's front loading that sort of preparation and then joining in. Like, it's like, I'm not the app from XCOM or the app from like Alchemy or that kind of stuff, or I'm not the deck in the middle of Discworld, if we go back to talking about that. I'm one of the players. Like, my role is games master, I know more of the secrets, but I'm not just here to facilitate a game. And I think a lot of folks forget that. Like, I'm playing as much as you are, and that's why it's fun for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see a lot in groups these days, like especially like some of the, so there are RPG groups in the same way there's massive board game groups. Like board game trading in chat is ginormous, and there
Yes,
are
it
like,
is. Yeah. Yeah.
like D&D UK, D&D this campaign, and they're ginormous as well. But there's a lot of folks in there going, we are 4 people who need a GM who will do us this. And it's like, well, I don't want to do that because I want a game where we're all involved and I can be involved. I'm not just here to
Yeah.
facilitate the rules. And to a certain
Mm-hmm.
degree, maybe, the Alexa GM a game for me, but I think you can do that with Pathfinder at the minute. You can get, there's a...
That's I don't know. I mean, I guess one of the biggest things that everybody's talking about is kind of like AI.
Yeah.
And how that potentially is going to have an effect. Not convinced.
Well, no, but for those folks who are just like, we are 4 people and this is the incredibly niche adventure that we want somebody to run, and we must all get these magic weapons, and we must all be, these cool people with this magic coats, and all get magic tattoos, and all hold hands. That an AI GM would do fine for them, because they've already got such a niche and exacting kind of route way through their adventure. There's no, they've already kind of decided what they want. Whereas the folks who are like, I want to make a character and have fun, can I come and play in your campaign? It's like, yeah, what campaign are we making, folks? What are we doing? I want to do high fantasy. Do you want to have very black and white bad guys? Like, these people are bad and these people are good? No, I want shades of grey. All right, cool, we can do that.
Yeah.
What do you feel about tech and magic? No tech. All right, well, we're not going to have Warforged and artificers. Let's just have rogues and sorcerers and, that kind of stuff. That's the sort of thing.
Do you feel like, for all the success that Critical Role has, that it does end up placing like a high bar on what people expect kind of like a role-playing experience to be? Do you think people kind of go into it kind of like going, oh, this is going to be the best thing kind of ever?
Yeah, like when we ran Adventure League at Dice and Donuts, there was regularly always somebody who'd be like, I want to be a Shadowkai half-elf called this, and I want this and this, and we'd be like, you're going to have to dial that back a bit, because this is level 1, and this adventure has got to last 2 hours, and we've got 6 people around the table, and none of y'all got magic items. And I remember having a conversation with someone. So there's an item in Dungeons and Dragons. It's in, what book is it? Strahd, Curse of Strahd. There's an item in Curse of Strahd called the Sunblade. And when you find it, I guess there's spoilers here for anybody who hasn't played Curse of Strahd. When you find it, it's just a sword hilt. But when you become attuned to it, when you spend time with it and you learn the magical properties of this sword, it's essentially the magical blade of light appears out the sheath out the hilt of the sword. It's a lightsaber, yeah?
Yeah. It's a lightsaber, yeah.
It's a lightsaber. It doesn't cut through metal and stuff, but it's it's a magical blade that just springs from the hilt. And I remember talking with one of these folks who was like, oh, I really want a lightsaber, and I really want to make this character. I'm like, well, part of the joy in like the campaign we're running in Adventure League is finding out if your character, the journey to get that. Because I could just go, yes, you've got it. Now what? That's it. That was the adventure. You did it. Congratulations. Now what? Well, I need to go on an adventure to use it. Why? You've used it. Brilliant. And there was that moment with the kid who was like, oh, so it's not the story of the guy with the cool stuff. It's the journey of getting to be the guy with the cool stuff.
I've actually to be the kind of the person that can actually hold the cool stuff and the
trials of how I got to get the cool stuff. And that was the sort of thing, like when we just wrapped up the campaign, we did like the epilogue, And they're like, I'm a level 20 character. I've just killed Tiamat. Why do I have to have a negotiation with the local church about the trade routes to my castle now? Because, you know, you're a level 20 character. You've done all the cool stuff. Like, you need to retire.
You've got back down to kind of like responsibility. You've got to make sure that you're separating your whites from your darks when you do your colours when you do the wash, to make sure you don't end up like dyeing everything that you have like light green or light pink, basically.
Yeah, you'll be the light green knight instead of the sapphire knight. You know, you've got to deal with this stuff, and it's not like the stuff is not part of what playing the RPG is about. It's the journey, it's the adventure, it's the being able to go, oh, you remember when we had that, like when the bard was accused of treason, so he was locked up and we had to have the barbarian go and negotiate with the people. That was hilarious. A barbarian cannot negotiate. They have no skills in talking to people. They get very angry and smash stuff up. The person who'd be good is locked away because he'd committed treason. So off you go.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh no. That's brilliant. That's funny. Not. I've got this sword and I stood on a hill and waved a sword about. But yeah.
Do you notice a change in characters from when somebody kind of starts? Like, I'm not talking about one shots, but say somebody, if you're playing over like say 5 sessions or 10 sessions. Do you notice a difference between the character that somebody thinks that their character is at the beginning and the character that they actually end up with at the end, kind of the end?
Yeah, I definitely think like folks make this archetype. Like I am the company agent who's purely in for the money, or I am the this, the that, the other. And then you put those characters in situations, and partly through like the player and partly through the dice makes them a different person than what you first set out from. And like I've had moments where folks are like, I thought this character was going to be really straight-laced, but I'm sat around 5 rogues. So how did I get here? Like because I thought this character would never... And we have to work out how does that character go on a journey with, 5 rogues and a paladin? Because if we can't like reconcile that and work out a way for that to happen, the adventure doesn't happen. Or that kind of stuff. Or like how did I get in this situation? Well, there were some bad crits, and sorry to say, now you're locked up, that kind of thing. And yeah, so there are definitely moments where like I would never have thought my arcane trickster would be in love with a cleric of whatever. That's a journey in itself, and you're like, cool. That's the stuff I love about the things, not finding the sun sword in a pile of treasure and going, I've got a lightsaber. But yeah, definitely like these sorts of things that change the stuff, and all, like the same for the story. Like, I thought we were going to be, avenging this thing, but actually we're just going to be making friends with everybody as we go along. What's going on here? Yeah. That's cool. Okay, completely not the way I thought we would negotiate this space treaty.
With all the systems that are out there, and it sounds like, you've played quite a fair number of kind of different systems. Do you still think that there's opportunities for newer, fresher, kind of different type of systems to kind of come out there? Or do you think are we kind of at our, we've got our gothic, we've got our kind of our steampunk with like Blades in the Dark, we've got like our fantasy with our, our D&D. Are we kind of reaching the point where what we're doing is people will bring out systems and it's kind of like, well, this is kind of like, say, this is like Vampire Masquerade, except everybody's actually really, really happy kind of thing. Or, is there a chance for kind of more different kind of experiences and stuff?
I think the systems help you tell a specific type of narrative. and then it's coloured in with fantasy or science fiction or that kind of stuff. At its heart, Dungeons and Dragons is a game about conflict, about fighting. Like,
yes.
And I know Critical Role and Dimension 20 and all those folks do beautiful sort of narrative, character-driven things, but the mechanics in Pathfinder or that kind of stuff, those specific things are there to make you have a fight. If you look down the list, 80 to 90% of your cool stuff happens in combat. It's based on like the combat things. There are other systems in the fantasy world whose conflict is not smacking somebody in the face with an ice knife. And I think there is space in like the systems for different conflicts. Like if you look at WFRP versus Dungeons and Dragons, there's loads of things in WFRP. There's like gossip and haggle and bluff. Was it gossip? Blather. Blather's a phenomenal skill in WFRP. Basically, I and then me, and I was drunk. So we were, and your enemies look at you going, what? And your enemy could be the tax official. You spend 5 minutes blathering at the tax official, you get out of having to pay the tax. Like that wouldn't be a skill in 5e, because you'd spend 2 minutes trying to charm or persuade the tax official, and then you'd roll initiative and have a fight with him and his guards and the people in the town, and then you're locked up. So I think at the heart, like, there are different sort of conflicts. Like, why play Alien RPG over those Dark Places? Why, when they're both sort of retro futuristic sci-fi? Well, Alien deals with those moments where the panic gets away from you. So the bit where we find out whether you're going to wet yourself or punch someone, that kind of thing. And that's what the panic dice do. They literally help you work out how that character would be in that, versus something else where it's more about, like, how well do you punch the unknown space entity? Do you punch it? Is it an uppercut? Is it a hook? Rather than do you punch it or do you wet yourself? I think in the design space, there's lots of room for things. And what I think drives me a little bit putty is people trying to take one system and use it for everything. And to me, that's like if we bring it back to board games, that would be a bit like me going, all right, I know how to play alchemy. Yes. Now we're going to use that to play Camel Up. Because alchemy is the supreme system. Like, how do we bend alchemy to also give me the randomness of trying to bet on camels, but we have to use alchemy to do it? How do I take Dungeons and Dragons and use it to make a heist system? You don't. You play Blades in the Dark, and you put a fantasy skin on Blades in the Dark. How do I take Dungeons and Dragons and make it Star Wars? You don't. You take the Star Wars system, because that has inherently in it light side and dark side, the sway of the Force. That's a thing that's been designed for it. How do I take Dungeons and Dragons and add Cthulhu mythos in? You don't. You play Call of Cthulhu, and it's the sort of, like, can you imagine if Pandemic was the prominent game? It's not. Oh, I guess we have that situation. Like, everybody thinks of playing board games as Monopoly, and we've reached the point in board games where most people will go, it's not. It's really not an indication of our genre anymore. Charlie Chaplin was a classic film. Monopoly was a classic board game. But now we've got the Avengers and Quantum Mania and the Barbie film. So please stop talking about Charlie Chaplin. Board games reach that. Like, we used to play Monopoly all the time, but now we've got Potion Explosion, Colt Express, Dead of Winter, and you can rattle up, and people go, oh wow, that's amazing. thing in board game.
It's become like a meme, isn't it? Do you a board game? Oh, you mean like Ken Monopoly? But then the irony is that there's so many flavors of
Like,
Monopoly now. There's probably more likely to be an Avengers Monopoly game coming out than there is actually an Avengers board game. I know there is. I know that
yeah.
Simon have done like the Marvel ones, but in terms of it coming out and kind of being accepted, Monopoly's. I think Monopoly's kind of still there because I think everybody has kind of like a Monopoly memory, and I think that's what they go back to. You're kind of tapping into that, and it's kind of like taking that out. But when it comes to the different systems, then because you create your own RPGs,
yeah.
how much?
I was going to say, I will confess to pinching like the base systems from some folks publish under open gaming license. So the open gaming license and all that furore, whatever you got involved with, like I still don't make my own systems. Like I'm straight up not going to take credit for that. I tweak the systems for the conflict I want to highlight for the the Year Zero engine, which is the one that Free League published. They've got a really nice sort of base system. You grab a bunch of D6s, those dice that we'd use in Monopoly, you put them to a different use. But it's very easy. Like you've got a number 5 here, that means 5 dice. We have to roll it, and if we get 6s, that's a success. How many successes do you need? At least 1. It's easy. Done. Job's good. And you can take that system, and because it's that bit there, that grab a bunch of dice and roll it, is actually very simple. You can then bend it, bolt bits on, take bits off, colour it in slightly differently, put stipulations on how you have to fit a criteria to do a thing, that you can then apply it to a whole swathe of genres. And that's sort of what I do. I manipulate that base system. That's my favourite one. There's another system that I've got sort of excited by recently, which is the Shiver, the horror RPG. I really enjoy my horror and my spooky stuff. But the Shiver, they have a very similar sort of system. And again, it involves, they've got some D8s in there, 8-sided dice as well. So you've got D6s and D8s, and you manipulate that dice pool to look for certain successes. And that's quite fun, and I've been looking at using that. And then there's the Modifius 2D20 where so I take those base systems and fiddle with them. Like I don't want anybody to think I completely create my systems for my own, because that's a little bit sneaky.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you go to say Drive Through RPG, and there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are making kind of their own versions and their own kind of shake and bakes and stuff.
That's the other thing. From doing stuff with the board game cafes, it makes it very easy to see. Oh, this is that system with that thing bolted on the side for board games. This is that system with this card bolted on the side. This is these things with that and this and that. Oh, we're doing hand management, but we're doing it blind. Hanabi kind of thing. That sort of stuff. And it's nothing, I think, different to board games when it comes to the RPGs. You can't really copyright mechanics, because I will just do it a tiny bit differently and then it's unique. But yeah, there's a thing going on Drive-Thru. It's called Pocket Quest. I had a lot of fun with that last year, which is basically make a 20-page RPG. That's your design constraint. 20 pages. This year's theme is space. Make a 20-page space RPG. The only things in your page count that don't count are your cover, your back page, and your character sheet, I think. So you could do a 24-page RPG, but everything in there has to be your RPG. And those things are really fun. And you see people doing card-based ones, you have a pack of cards, and if you draw this, this means this, or which is like a success limiting sort of thing. If you draw 10 cards and that's all you've got available for this session, you might draw a load of NAF cards. Do you play the NAF cards so that you can, do you jump in and try everything, or do you hold them back? You might have drawn really well, so you don't want to, and like choices in your mechanics, or is it fate dice where you have goodish and baddish and maybe-ish sort of answers, and just play with all those mechanics and that kind of stuff. And I think those are good fun. And I think there's plenty of space to sort of tweak these little things left and right, because there's a billion different stories that require a billion different solutions.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've heard about or is coming to the RPG space which you're kind of excited to get your hands on or take a look at or even play that's kind of coming up?
I think a lot of the stuff at the minute, like there's the Walking Dead RPG which is coming out from Free League. Just been having a look at the early, it was the beta, I think the beta rules. That looks fun. And that's based on the TV show, not the comics, so that's a bit like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, a little bit of a sort of narrowing there. I think I'm a little bit interested in the Delta Green stuff. Like, I've got a lot of Delta Green, and I don't get to play it as nearly as much. It's like a modern day Cthulhu stuff, conspiracy Cthulhu thing.
Right, okay.
It's kind of like X-Files meets True Detective. Situation.
Yeah.
And so I've got a lot of that stuff out, and I'm waiting on a few bits and pieces to come from a Kickstarter from a while ago. The thing about the guys behind Delta Green is they're very adamant that they won't just publish if it's not. They won't publish to meet a deadline, so quite frequently they go over because they want it to be right. They want to, what's his name? Sean Ivey. He quite often says they're going to publish when it's perfect. And they're not prepared to put something that they're not going to be absolutely proud of. Unfortunately, it means quite often you're waiting. But when the books land, they're gorgeous, and you are like, oh, okay, this was worth it. And the stories and the spookiness of the thing is like, oh, okay, no, that's great. I'm really excited to get this. Can I have my book now rather than the PDF? So there's some Delta Green, the conspiracy is the next thing I'm looking forward to. I don't think there's nothing on the horizon in the same sort of way as folks would be like, oh, coming to Expo is this game. We're going to demo this game at Gen Con, or pick this game up at Essen. There's nothing, like, it's not really that big an industry that it's got those things outside of Wizards of Coast Reach.
Is there less kind of fear of missing out kind of thing? Because the whole board game industry seems to be driven at the moment by intense amounts of marketing, as opposed to people actually discussing whether or not a product's kind of any good. There seems to be an awful lot of, you need to get this now, otherwise it's not going to exist. And I can see that, because if it ends up only being 5,000 units of something does exist, then that means it's a finite thing and people can't get their hands on it. Whereas I would say in an RPG, I would say if I really, really wanted to get my hands on an RPG, then I don't have to have a full box of stuff. I mean, if I've got a PDF, I could probably still buy the PDFs. Does it mean that in order for, and this is probably stretching a bit, but in order for an RPG, for people to kind of like go wow at an RPG, it actually needs to deliver as a product instead of just being rushed along in the kind of the marketing. I remember and I don't know if you know this, Kids on Bikes.
Oh yeah, Kids on Bikes, it's in second edition.
Yeah, it managed to kind of like, I don't know if it kind of managed to hit exactly the kind of the zeitgeist when kind of Stranger Things came out.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
There was a lot of people kind of were deaf, it was kind of right place, right time. And obviously, it had strengths behind it as a product itself. But I think the fact that it's kind of like, as you said, it's gone into a second edition. Does that mean it's actually a very, very good? It's proven itself to actually be a good product that people are not only wanting to buy kind of like one. They've kind of went, oh, I want to get the second edition if it's got like expanded rules or slightly changed errata and stuff like that in it.
I think RPGs sometimes can be a bit of a strange beast, because I know there are still people playing like first edition Dungeons and Dragons, and we will never play another system again. I think there's folks still definitely get caught up in the Kickstarter kind of thing, and there are, and I've never seen it in there's like a month on Kickstarter called Zine Quest, which is literally hundreds of little small RPGs, basically in paperback kind of thing. You're not talking like big sort of ones, and that's a frenzy sometimes. That people are going to run like a 2-week Zine Quest, a 4-week Zine Quest, a 1-week quick start or whatever they call. And there's definitely that kind of hype. Like, if you don't kickstart it now, if you don't kickstart this, you'll never get the book. And obviously RPG players are like, oh, you must have a book, the physical book at the table, you must have it. And you're like, no, you don't. You got a tablet now, you can look at a PDF, and it's actually quicker to type in the search field to find the rules for grappling than it ever was. And I didn't have to put sticky notes in it. It's all good. But there's definitely that level of like, you must back this to get the thing. There's definitely, like, I've got on my shelf still in shrink wrap because I was hyped up and fooled along with it, and I do regret getting it. The One Ring RPG Special Edition.
Wow.
And it's this beautiful like red book, and it's got gold sort of symbols and stuff on it. I've never played the One Ring. I'm never going to. I genuinely just got caught up in buying this because it was the Lord of the Rings and it was a publisher I really like, and and then I get to it and I'm like, the book itself, like the PDF I've read, and it's like, this is great. I'm not going to play this.
But was it hundreds and hundreds of pounds though?
I think I spent like 120 quid on it. So it got the special edition book, the PDFs, the starter set, and a GM screen. So
that's all right.
So it was it was good.
Yeah.
But it was good, but it wasn't like my RPG. It wasn't a thing for me. I didn't need that RPG in my life, and I know this because when was it? It was a few years ago now. I still haven't taken it out of shrink. And it's a bit like that Van Gogh. We were talking about Van Gogh earlier. Like this is bringing it round in a full circle. It's potentially worth about 120 quid if I can be bothered to find someone to buy it from me, and if I can be bothered to post it special delivery to make sure it gets there, and if I can be bothered to list it online. I can't. So it's going to sit in shrink on that shelf down there forever. And it's like,
I don't know if that's I'm not sure if that's a kind of like a bad thing.
But there's definitely the hype. And the roller coaster that comes with it. And there's definitely like the thing. But I think the sort of miss out FOMO that you get with the board games, like if you do not back the Cool Mini or not at the highest pledge level to get the 73 promos kind of thing. I think it's the other way around for RPGs. It's like, if you don't back this indie one, you're never going to get it in print. And we're grown-ards. We want it in print. We want the book at the table. We want the physical stuff. I know there's lots of VTTs, and that's amazing. I think that's probably looking at the time a conversation for a different time. But the FOMO in RPGs is the missing the indie books or the physical print right over the go to drive-through RPG and just get the PDF whenever you need it.
Special get the PDF,
Special edition, single print run, one of 500. Okay, I need it. I don't, but I've got it.
But you do. but you
got
get
it.
it anyway, and
I've
then
got
you
it,
kind of
yeah.
like get it, and it's like it's on its way. Is there a quicker turnaround? I would assume there's a quicker turnaround on these RPG Kickstarters then.
Some of them are and some of them aren't. Like, some of them, the One Ring stuff was quite good. Because I think they'd already got all the stuff approved by the estate, like the Tolkien estate. That was all like literally signed off, and that was pretty good. But some of them, especially the smaller ones, don't know how big a print run they're going to need until the Kickstarter's end, and then you've got to slot that in with wherever. And then because indie folks that aren't Wizards of the Coast or Paizo are looking for like little stuff. They want to get it done so quickly, in terms of as soon as it's printed, it's gone to distribution and it's away, because they can't afford warehousing and they can't afford that kind of stuff. So in that kind of thing, sometimes it can be a year and a bit and a little bit more. Or some of them, like there is one, Coriolis is a space RPG done by the same folks who did the Lord of the Rings, the One Ring stuff, years and years before. And in one of their stretch goals, it's like, we'll do the Coriolis cookbook. Still waiting for that. But that it was like, it's never going to happen. And nobody's like genuinely annoyed about it, because it was like one of those stupid stretch goals that they put in when a company is new and they're trying to do something cool. We'll do a Coriolis.
And they just ran out of stretch goals.
And so everybody's like, yeah, I might have my shiny book, but where's my Coriolis cookbook? Where's my... and so you still get stuff like that technically are ongoing, like, and you can see. But yeah, they're typically like waiting for that insertion into a print run. Or because it's like Kevin and his wife, it's waiting for them to book a week off work to pack the 500 A5 books and post them out. Where is my book? Where is my book? Well, actually, my wife's been ill, and I'm only on order 36 because I've had to do double shifts. And you're like, oh,
we ran out of like bubble wrap, and we ran out of like envelopes to ship it to everybody.
Like my local post office says I can't bring any more in for a week, so we have to wait. Like, those are real updates. Like, that's genuinely real updates I have read on RPG Kickstarters, and you're like, oh, okay, this is still not this is not a big industry, a big thing. We might have Dungeons and Dragons and Paizo and Green Ronin are another big name. They've got RPGs like The Expanse, not The Witcher, Dragon Age, and that kind of stuff. There's still about 3 of them. It's not a big operation.
A huge operation. So bringing it back around full circle. Yeah. How visible will you be at the expo? I mean, will you be there with like a cattle prod and a smile and a microphone? Are you going to be inviting people on? Are you going to be like, are we expecting you to be running about the halls trying to track people down to get them to remember that they had a live podcast that we're going to be doing?
This year, Ignacy Trevicek is not doing a podcast, so I don't need to do that. True story. We once had to send someone to the Portal Game stand to find Ignacy because he was too busy drawing moo cows and getting cookies. And we're like, no, we need to take your MD and take him to a different room.
Fun fact: I was speaking. Well, I wasn't. I was emailing with Ignacy just the other day, and we're going to try and get him on the show.
Awesome! Yeah,
fairly soon. So
wonderful person to chat with. Really, really tough guy. Did have to drag him off the stand to come and talk to people in a room because he was late and no one could find him. And then he left with a carrier bag of cookies. It was great. So in terms of like folks finding me at Expo, I mostly like run around between a bunch of locations and try and encourage people to finish on time, people to start on time. Sometimes in sellout situations, like when an event is fully subscribed, to encourage gamers not to use the chair next to them to put their bag of treasures on. Like, I'm going to put a guest, I'm going to put an audience member on that chair. Please put your bag on the floor. Yeah. One thing I have indulged in, and folks who have been to some of the shows at Expo might have seen me do this. For the past since 6 years, so not my first 2 expos, but in the past 6 years, I've always managed to at the first sellout event take a selfie on the stage with the crowd, if that makes sense. It's like my rock star moment. Just indulge myself.
There you go.
Last year I did it at one of the dark rooms with John Robinson, and that was fun. Trying to fit 350 people in a photo with you is awesome, and I will endeavour to do that this year. So that's probably the most visible bit I make myself when I get on stage and indulge in being a rock star. But I'm the lady with pink hair who is checking your ticket, running around. Sometimes you see me running after a guest who wants to do a social media thing, like where they run past the queue or they take selfies, or sometimes I'm there handing out T-shirts as they're selling them, doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, do say hi. If I am like, hey, hi, and that's the end of the conversation, it's because I've got somewhere else to go and not being rude.
Somewhere else to go. If people want to find you online, where do you exist on the internet webs?
There's a couple of ways. Millie the GM is mostly I think Twitter and Instagram and that kind of stuff. And then I sometimes, or I quite frequently loiter in the Garblag Games Discord, because that's where I do my Tuesday night space RPG where we're doing Coriolis, Garblag Games. But yeah, if you come and find Millie the GM, that's probably me, and I'll probably be able to point you into like a Discord. I mean, I'm not on like, what is it, Mastodon and social. I'm not on any of the newer stuff because I
think ironically the Mastodon's gone the way of the woolly mammoth, and I don't know how many people kind of use it. I don't hear people kind of speaking about it, but there you go. If you want to find out where we are, just go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us in all the different places. Worn Out Race Faces, bright and early for the daily races, and we're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and you can find us on our blog. And if you like what you've listened to tonight, you can do us a couple of things. Go and tell somebody else that we exist, because that's all very, very nice. And if you go to Spotify, and this is based on Benji, go to Spotify and drop us a rating or review. If you are going to be dropping us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed, but don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us 5 stars because it's in the middle. It's a bit average. And I'm just a little bit average, but the person who's not been average tonight, rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Millie GM. Thank you very, very much for guesting.
Thank you for chatting around everything with me.
There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember there were many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards?
No.
That's very, very well said. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So, say goodbye from Millie. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, folks.
And it's goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe. Roll 6s. Or roll 20s. Don't roll 1s.
I mean, it depends on the system. If you're Modiphius, you want to roll the 1s. Just roll numbers.
Roll numbers. Roll over. Be happy. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.